Well, I mean, meditation, number one, means to become familiar with, but transformation and change means, as I said, to be greater than your environment. And what is your environment made of? Objects, things, people, places. To be greater than your body, the habituations and emotional conditioning, and to be greater than time. So meditation then is a great way to close your eyes and disconnect from your outer world. And whether you play music or wear earphones, disconnect from your known outer environment by not hearing distractions and sounds, and to sit your body down, and so that it's not eating and tasting and smelling and experiencing and feeling, and not think about what's going to happen on your schedule in the future, and not keep remembering what happened to you in
Right.
the past. Keep working for the sweet spot of the generous present moment. And so then by doing this and practicing disconnecting from your body, your environment, and time, people can begin to focus on their inner world. And when they do that properly, we now know that as you begin to reduce the stimulation, your brain waves begin to slow down. And the purpose of meditation is to get beyond the analytical mind. And what separates the conscious mind from the subconscious mind is that analytical mind. And learning how to slow your brain waves down into slower frequencies begins to open the door between the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. And now you can rewrite a new program. Now you can rehearse a new track. Now you can record a new future. And you begin to program your subconscious become more naturally who you want to be. And then we have some great research in the last couple of years to show that students, when they do this properly, when they shut down most of the function in their thinking neocortex, they're disconnecting from the identity, the memory bank of the known self, the knowledge and experience that's the autobiographical you and thinking neocortex. Lights go out there. And when we see lights going out in this part of the brain in theta, and the brain moves outside of normal theta, something really amazing happens. We could actually predict that there's going to be a very large arousal in the nervous system. And arousals are usually created by the outer environment, by some stimulation, whether it's fear, whether it's pain and suffering, whether it's anxiety, that there's something that's stimulating us in the outer environment. The aggression is causing us to become aroused, but this arousal is like ecstasy. This arousal is like bliss. And we see the brain go into these very, very high, extremely high gamma brainwave patterns, 200 to 300 to 400 times outside of normal. And the person is having an elegant moment. They're connecting to energy and their autonomic nervous system, that part of the brain that's automatically controlling all the systems and coordinating all the systems and cells and tissues in your body, is getting a very organized, coherent frequency, a very fast frequency, and it's sending very fast impulses to the cells, and cells get a biological upgrade. And we see people in one instant have a moment and have a transformation in their biology. They get an upgrade. And then if you said, how am I going to act that in my day with my children today, in relationships with everybody? What does honor look like? What does nobility look like? What does respect look like? What does reverence look like for life? How can I be more compassionate? And you began to think about how you were going to behave in that day. If you did it properly, just like those piano players, just like those muscle exercisers, you would begin to install more neurological hardware in your brain. And if you kept doing it, it would become the software program, and you, as I said, would behave that way. And then bringing on that elevated emotion then, and teaching your body what your future feels like before it's happened, and understanding that the body's so objective that it doesn't know the difference between the real life experience and the experience you create by emotion. That means then, if the environment signals the gene and the end product of the experience in the environment is an emotion, you could signal the gene ahead of the environment if you feel this emotion. And if you understand that, you would assign meaning to it, and you wouldn't get up until you felt it. Now, I would say then, if you kept practicing this, you would begin to neurochemically condition your mind and body into a new state of being. And that would begin to become more familiar to you. And you would begin to think differently, begin to act differently, and you would begin to feel differently. And that's a new personality. And many people who heal in this work, when they get on the stage and they say, we say, well, where did it go? Where did the cancer go? Where did the Parkinson's go? And they say, hey, I think it belongs in the old personality. I'm somebody else. And so there's a change in biology and chemistry as a result of it. So then, but when we dial down the thinking neocortex and you learn how to activate a latent system in your brain, our research shows that there's a very, very high amount of energy in the area right around the pineal gland in the brain. And the pineal gland is like the brain's radio receiver. And now the person is connecting to information, but that information isn't coming from their senses. That information is actually coming from frequency, because frequency carries information. And the pineal gland acts as a transducer. It begins to take that frequency just like a TV antenna and turn it into profound visual imagery. And the person has a very profound inner event, a transcendental moment that seems more real than anything they've ever experienced in their life.
Wow.
They're having full-on sensory experience without their senses. The third eye, whatever, an inner vision begins to awaken them to who they really are. And that energy is an arousal, and it causes them to become more conscious.
Now, are you seeing that these moments, right, can be induced reliably, or are these moments more spontaneous and we can't really control them?
Well, yes and no. So when you see that kind of arousal, the person having that inner event, there is an upgrade. You ask them about that subjective experience, and they'll tell you a very important message. The message is something outside of what they've ever experienced before. And so when we look at a brain scan, many times we'll start seeing specific things starting to happen, and we can say, she's going to pop. She's going to go. We can actually know, like, oh, that's just like the last one that happened. And then all of a sudden we're like, you see the person, it's hilarious. They're filled with light. They're filled with energy, and they don't want the moment to end. They want to stay in it. And so we can predict it many times. And when we did our last measurements in Palm Springs, California, at our last event before the Global Challenge here, it was in February. We had 10 people at a time having their brain scanned during our week-long event. And on the average, about 2 to 3 people were having very similar brain patterns just like that. And the area in the brain called Brodmann's Area 30 is the area responsible for very profound long-term memories that are created from the emotions of ecstasy, bliss, connection, love, joy, freedom. They're having a positive trauma to their nervous system that's changing them. So some of those, so if 2 or 3 people out of 1,000 or 1,100 people are having that experience, if we extrapolate out to the entire audience, that means that 200 or 300 people in the audience are having similar experiences as the scope of just 10 people that we were studying.